quite extraordinary events this weekend in Venezuela. We are looking at the business and the energy implications of them this morning. It was a sort of weekend where everyone suddenly becomes an expert in heavy crude. The US President Donald Trump saying that US energy companies will re-enter and rebuild Venezuela's energy industry after the removal of the country's president. Very pleased to be joined for a bit of an educational section by the Qamar Energy CEO, Robin Mills. Robin, good morning. Thanks for speaking to us.
Hi, good morning.
Let's start with a little bit of context. Venezuela, home to the world's largest oil reserves. How large is large? Can you compare this to, for example, Saudi Arabia or even the UAE?
Yeah, so, officially Venezuela reserves 303 billion barrels as compared to the UAE, just over 100, Saudi well over 200. So, officially the largest. It's kind of a false figure. As you alluded to, the Venezuelan crude is mostly extra heavy oil. Not nearly as commercially valuable, and probably actually not all of that 303 billion barrels is really commercially recoverable. But nevertheless, clearly a lot.
It is a lot, but at the moment it is producing less than 1% of the world's current output, pumping less than 1 million barrels a day. Talk to me about the current state of infrastructure and production.
Well, terrible. So it's been through 20 plus years of underinvestment, sabotage, looting, nationalization, all the skilled people leaving. So it's in a very, very, very poor shape now. And that's why production has collapsed. It was well over 2.5 million barrels per day, even 10 years ago. And now, as you say, under 1 million. But with investment, with time, with work, production could certainly increase, perhaps could get back to that 2 million, 2.5 million over the course of a few years with stability and sustained investment.
OK, well, let's put politics and the rights and wrongs aside and look at what the potential implications of that could be. The US President Donald Trump said that US energy companies could invest billions of dollars and extract a tremendous amount of wealth out of Venezuela. At the moment, we have one US company in there, Chevron, and a lot that have been in but have pulled out. Do you want to give us a little bit of the history there?
Yes, so Hugo Chavez, who was president from about 98 onwards and until he died, and then Nicolas Maduro, of course, succeeded him, and the president that was just snatched by the US. They nationalized most of the Venezuelan oil industry. They expelled foreign investors, which, as you say, included US companies, ExxonMobil and ConocoPhillips, particularly, who were awarded a lot of money in compensation, which they've been chasing to try and reclaim ever since. Instead, Chinese companies, Russian companies came in. Chinese are kind of still there in a small way. And Chevron has been trying to hold on through all this period of nationalization and sanctions, and has more or less managed to stay in there. But we'll have to see, again, whether US companies or anybody else is able to come back and operate in any kind of a normal way.
Well, that's my question. Would there be the appetite for the ExxonMobils, for the Conocos to invest billions of dollars, given the current uncertainty, given that history, and given, as you say, the grade of oil that we're talking about? Do the potential gains outweigh those risks?
The gains are huge, right? I mean, these are very large resources. They're often high cost. They're difficult. The oil, mostly heavy oil, not all heavy oil. There is some decent quality light oil as well, which people may go after in preference first. But yeah, mostly heavy. It really all depends on political stability and on the investment terms that are offered, and whether companies think their experience there will be any happier than it was 20 years ago.
OK, well, let's have a look at what it could mean for prices, supply and demand. We've got a bearish market at the moment. Most of the analysts that we have spoken to in our New Year's wrap-ups are not expecting to see a rise. In fact, they're expecting to see further falls in the energy price this year. Short term, what we've seen in Venezuela mean for oil prices and for Venezuelan exports?
Right, so Venezuelan oil was already being cut off pretty severely by US sanctions, and in fact there was almost a blockade in December, so exports had fallen by about half already. So if anything, I see this move as bearish for oil prices. If a new leader is more acceptable to the US, if sanctions are eased, then Venezuelan oil will increase to a limited degree. So yes, and the market's had a couple of days to digest this impact. When it opens today, I expect prices to be down slightly, but not a dramatic impact either way.
Well, and which they are in Asia, down a little this morning. But again, like you say, they're not falling off a cliff. What is the outlook then, medium to long term, for global supply? What kind of time frame could we be talking about for extra production to be brought in at a time when we're already predicting a bit of a glut?
Yeah, sure. So I don't, this year, 2026, is kind of the worst year for that predicted glut. And I don't see Venezuela making much of a recovery during this year, regardless of what happens. For major investment, major gains in production, we're talking 3 to 4 years. And at that point, the market has some time to absorb it. So, yes, it's kind of, I guess, moderately bearish. It'll mean more competition for other OPEC countries, but over a period of time where there's some room for adjustment.
What could it mean if we have US control in Venezuela, one of the founding members of OPEC, for OPEC's ability to influence the market by turning the taps on and off?
Well, that's a really interesting story, because what happened in the late 90s, but just before Hugo Chavez came to power, was Venezuela said, we're going to challenge Saudi Arabia, we're going to challenge the other OPEC countries, we want to boost our production enormously. And they did so, and prices crashed at one point below $10 per barrel in the late 90s, and ultimately to the big damage of Venezuela. Now, if Venezuela were to try and make a rush for production again, I don't think it would be like the late 90s, but there might be an effort to boost production quite a bit with the heavy involvement of US and other international companies.
So what will you be watching for and listening for next?
Well, I want to know who is the long-term president ultimately established, and what is their vision for the oil industry. The opposition party was very much more inclined to privatization, bringing in foreign investment. That'll be more difficult for nationalist reasons if it's more like a successor of Nicolas Maduro and his party. So we'll have to see, really, I think, which political alignment Venezuela takes. I think any new president will certainly, based on these events, will be very cautious how they deal with the US, and will not want to come out on the US's bad side.
Thank you so much for joining us this morning, giving us a bit of a 101 into the oil implications and the history of the Venezuelan oil industry. There, for our listeners, young and old this morning, the Qamar Energy CEO, Robin Mills.